Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LP FM. Connecting Highline and our region. Share your story. Our Highline Voices, history, cultural heritage, art, performances, contemporary, pop culture. We are very motivated to provide a vibrant community museum and authentic social gathering place. It truly takes a village to raise a museum. Despite the challenges, our daily inspiration is our eagerness to build a stronger and more connected community. This museum is from the community to the community. Our passion is for our visitors to have access to a broad spectrum of information sources and cultural perspectives. Our Highline Voices.
Hi, this is Nancy from the Highline Heritage Museum, and welcome back to today's show. We have this wonderful person that I think that you right away, you're going to learn why she's beautiful and wonderful in many different ways. I'm going to let her introduce herself. But before we start, I just wanted to remind people why are we doing this. It's just basically following the values of our museum, which is inclusion and diversity and accessibility, and just get to know each other. That is why we're doing this work. And so once again, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to let her introduce herself. Go for it.
Hi, thank you so much, Nancy, for having me here. My name is Marieke, and Nancy asked me, who am I? That's a question that could take a lot longer than a short interview. But for now, I'll say part of who I am is a participatory artist. And so what I do is I hold the creative space for people to come into community and share their voices, their hearts, their stories, and I guide them through the process of working together collaboratively to shape these stories into a song that we can sing together. So I'm going to share a song that I wrote, a short one that I wrote with refugees from Gaza and Syria when I was living in Belgium recently. And so this is in English. And the man that we met from Syria said that the way that he wanted to exist in the world, so here's another who am I question, was to be a word of hope and love and to live in every home. And he shared that in Arabic. And then our friend that we met from Gaza translated it, helped us translate it into English. I am a word of hope and love. I bring honor to the world. I will push the sorrow away. Can I come to your house and stay? I am a word. I am the root of all resistance. I bring light for us to grow. I will push the sorrow away. Can I come to your heart and stay? I am a word. I am the life you've left behind, the path that you now follow, the melody of your song, the place you can belong. I am a word of hope and love. I bring honor to the world. I will push the sorrow away. Can I come to your house and stay? I am a word.
Ah!
So I guess that's who I am in melody.
Wow.
Melodically.
And it does show who you are in many different ways. It shows my interpretation, and I still don't know much about you, and I'm happy about this interview. is that you are, like you say, you're creating the space for people to do this, to share a message. And so you are turning at this collaboration and making something so beautiful, combining it by who you are and by your own magic and your own talent. And this is so beautiful to see a mosaic again of different pieces coming together to see something just amazing. So thank you. I love it. I think this is the very first time we have an instrument playing in the cabin. And so yay, I'm glad that
Yay. And I honestly think magic draws magic. So
oh
there's magic.
no. So who are you?
Who am I? So I think one of the big goals that I have, or something I feel is kind of my path, is again, like, just to create that space and give permission for people to just step into who they are. And just sometimes we just need that space to sit and listen and to kind of hear what comes from the voices in our hearts, in our minds, in our bodies. And we live in a world that's increasingly isolated, and where there's just a lot of expectation to be successful, to be a certain version of yourself. And that white noise, it's like debris, right? Like you were saying, like sometimes our screen on our computer is blurry because we've smudged it, but we don't even realize it. So I think of, my work as this sort of like clearing of the lens, and not just for one person, but in community, because I think that the more that we can come together in community and be vulnerable in spaces, and the more that we can see ourselves and other people and see how we're connected even through our individual experiences. I mean, this song that I just sang is one from people who have experienced forced displacement, which I feel very blessed that I have not experienced, but I can feel my own story, the path I've left behind, the life I've left behind, and a new path. And so for me, it's guiding this creative process, especially, having people. So I just feel like I'm a guide. So I want to facilitate this stepping into this author of your own story and using your voice and really taking ownership of your song and then sharing those songs. There's to me real importance and just opportunities for transformation, empathy, and solidarity, and in creating, and for a song to come into being that didn't exist before, and then to share them so that people who may live completely different lives in other parts of the world can hear the story and the voice of another person in song and make a personal connection.
A few minutes ago, we just finished a program that we did here at the museum, and it is different from the description of the program to actually live it and experience it. And so we'll be having a quick video of an example of the work that she did with today's workshop. And so you'll see how she was able to pull people together, capturing everyone's content and share a message. And it was a powerful message for all of us. And then create something so organic and so beautiful and so just, I don't know, I think that all of us came into the space a bit hesitant and be like, I don't know what we're doing, and then nervousness and shyness. But then when you ask the question, Myrna asked the question, okay, any last thought? And it was the words from being therapeutic to joyful and happy to many different expressions that I honestly already forgot the expressions exactly once, but it was all of them had the same message. That was all about just this sense of just happiness that took place. And it took me by surprise, my reaction today. I was not expecting that at all.
It's not unusual.
I was going to ask you this, how common that is and what happened?
Yeah.
So what happened is that, I guess I'll let you explain what happened.
I'd love to hear from you too. But so part of what's challenging is describing something that's very experiential and organic and a little bit different every time into something static, like the written word isn't static, but describing it in written words, or, without actually experiencing it is something that I strive to be able to do. And, after a decade, I feel like maybe I'm getting closer. But then when you're in that experience, part of it is that it just unfolds differently, because each group of people that you bring together each individual person is different. And we're made up of these thousands of experiences that, when woven together, show who we are individually and also who we are together as human beings. So
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I mean, it's that uncertainty and it's that scariness. There's fear, right? It's scary stepping into a vulnerable space.
Yeah.
And, not but and I think it's so important that we kind of go into that place of discomfort and do it together so that we can see each other and hold each other up.
So real quickly, just to make sure that the people understand what I said that we're talking about.
Yes,
And so context. And so the invitation was for everyone to come over and do our workshop in creating a song. And so none of us have experience in writing music or poetry or none of that. So all of us kind of came in the same level as not having that experience. And so we came into the space and following their guidance and their instructions. But the process in general is basically here, write something from you using, my voice, my heart, or something that relates to you.
Some prompts.
Some prompts to do that. And so before that, we were able to read some of the examples, and we also had the experience of singing a song prior to that one. And so that kind of gives us a little bit of an idea of what we were going to be hitting. But in the process of asking us something to share, there is these themes that we were choosing. It was my heart, my mind.
So these
my
were
voice.
so I worked together with a woman who I feel so lucky to have met, Myrna, and she's a poet, and she's been doing poetry workshops for a really long time, and she works with refugee youth quite a bit, and so she shared this idea of using kind of a poetry prompt to invite people to step into that vulnerable space by just kind of sharing first and reading from other poems that start with my voice, my heart, my soul, and then just having time to each just kind of write on just a little card, whatever kind of was coming up for us in this moment, and reading as much or as little as we wanted, kind of going around our circle of people. And then we took those some phrases that people shared and I wrote them down, and then we just cut them out. We just cut them off the little piece of paper, and we kind of like a puzzle as a group thought about what order we might like for them to be. And then people stepped into the even more I think it's pretty vulnerable to sing, especially when you don't have a melody already. And we had people bravely step into that, and then the song itself kind of came into being. I think the song also has its own sort of agency. It came through us into the world.
And so that's what the structure that we're following. And so going back to the question that I was going to be heading into is, it took me by surprise, this reaction, and how common that reaction is. And my reaction was, as I'm writing, focusing in just one and trying to get only one sentence, right? I was not planning to do more of that, but it was going to be using my heart. And so I started like, a journey type of thing, more generic. But then as I'm coming up with phrases, I'm erasing them and I'm getting organically into a direction where I'm really, really vulnerable. And I'm basically writing, my heart is a mosaic with broken pieces, or like my heart is demanding and fears, but fears on wanting to feel more things or things like that. And so as I'm writing them, I'm feeling this emotional, but as I was reading them aloud, which I was not prepared for that, that's why I started to almost cry. Actually, I was teary, I was crying. And then it just was a complete surprise, because one thing was me thinking, feeling it, writing it completely different to express it to a room full of people. And so going back to the question, you said that is a normal thing, it's a normal reaction, it's a common thing to happen.
It's not unusual, we'll say, right? Like normal. I mean, but I think so. And the way that I first started doing this method of songwriting was to invite an individual person to share a story, something that held meaning for them. And then we would move through the process of guiding that one story into a song. And I do this with groups too. And I think that, and especially with groups, I just think there's just that importance of community. But anyway, that's another element. It does take people by surprise often, because I'm not sure. So I have this feeling that what we share, we can think we're kind of sharing maybe just even like a story about our day or going for a run or, making a cup of coffee. I think sometimes there's like a deeper meaning and maybe even there could be trauma, there can be emotion that's wrapped up in it that we don't necessarily realize until we have the space for it to come out. And healing comes up, at different moments. And I think sometimes we might be communicating through just like these, what we think of as like, oh, I'm just saying like my voice. But we're communicating something that's quite deep and vulnerable that we might not even realize is there. And that can bring up a lot of emotion. And then doing that in front of a group of people where, we don't even know necessarily is like an additional level of vulnerability that can bring up emotion. But also what a powerful way of being set free to have people then hold that space to allow you to just feel what you're feeling and not have to, cover it up.
I think that also what happened is knowing that it was full of strangers. Because I don't think I will ever write that when my family present or someone close to me and say things like that.
Yeah.
I think that having this strangers and not knowing that whatever you say is really, it's not going to matter. That we meet, we engage for a moment and we go share the space, but then we all go on different ways. We are not part of each other's life. And so that's another element of that too, that if it was like almost like a therapy, that you go to a therapy, you talk to that person because you know that no matter what you said, that person is not gonna be affected to whatever you said. With the same thing happened in this group. Do you work with kids?
I have worked with kids. Yeah, I've worked with people of all ages, kids all the way to people in the end stages of their life.
So that surprise factor, I'm sure, is stronger with adults than with kids.
Yeah, and kids are different. And it depends on the kids that you're working with. Kids who've, experienced forced displacement or trauma. I haven't worked with, children in the refugee community. But Myrna probably could speak to that quite a bit. I can say, so there's a woman, something that you were saying was kind of reminding me. There's a woman I worked with early on, and she was saying that, again, like what she shared in the story and through the song, it was like the musical process gave her a method of expression or a form of expression that she didn't have before. So like she was talking about becoming a mother and just just really enormous shift for her and kind of losing her identity as an individual, but then also having this external pressure from community saying like, you have to be a mother this way. And like, kind of like you were saying, she said, I couldn't kind of communicate what it was that I was experiencing in words to my family and my community. But through the process of writing this song, I now have something that really tells the story of what I went through in this moment in my life. So it's like a language in and of itself.
Yeah, there were two options that I was trying to define. My voice on my heart, and my voice. I felt that it's been restricted, and so even though I was expressing it through writing, I did not choose my voice because I felt that I did not have permission. Still, even though I'm talking with you guys and I'm doing all quirky things, I still got issues with, do I have permission to truly be me and express what I feel? And so with my heart, I felt it was a lot safer. And that was like, no, still, like you said, it's something, it's so basic that it comes from a very vulnerable place, no matter what, you are you. And so the power of sharing content and music. Another element that took me by surprise is how beautiful you sing.
Gosh,
no, it is.
thank
It's
you.
very, on top of that, exchanging and sharing. I was really impressed by how, number one, how you guide a group to organize, okay, what is the first part of the song and moving it and having a structure on it. So that was kind of technical, and it just, but at the same time also was really interesting to observe the group, how they had, depending on the message, how they wanted to combine things and group them. So that was that. But then you came in, and then you're trying to define what is a tune for that song and what is the direction of that song. And it was just beautiful.
Wow, thank
And
you.
so there's no tapping into much of a technical, but technical, but when it took it from the technical to a completely different direction at the end of the day, and it's just amazing to do that. Do you find lots of people crying? I know that we say that yes, but even afterwards, out of joy, no, out of surprise, like.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And so part of it is like, so when you work with people and you meet people in this capacity, you don't always know what the experience is later. And I think we can have these really kind of powerful shifts in sharing something that comes up for us. And you know, I mean, when I first started doing this work, you know, I started developing this method with a colleague in a graduate program. And when we kind of went through the process and I shared a story, I became very emotional, but hours later, right? It's kind of like, you know, if you kind of have this really intense experience and in the moment, like, you know, you're just kind of like moving through it, but then it's only after the dust settles that sometimes those kind of, what is it, after an earthquake, right? Kind of have those little ripples that happen, those waves. And so it can bring a lot of stuff up. It's not unusual. I mean, I've experienced it, and I've had people reach out to me after, and sometimes I just, you know, I don't know, but I think it does. I think the process holds a lot of power for people, just in that I keep in touch with a lot of people who reach out periodically. So
yeah, even like as simple as, like, for example, in our case, I've been exposed to a lot of stories and people sharing, but normally in a one-on-one setting, not like this. And I feel the pain. But it's no, if it was only one time, it's one thing. But what happens when it's really repetitive? There's a lot of, especially from minority groups, when there is a frustration, it's a pain in there, and it's an unresolved issue that I don't know how we're going to be addressing prejudice and racism and all those different elements of who we are as human beings. But when it's unresolved and when you hear it so often with so many, it gets to a point. There was a term that I was trying to remember just now, but I forgot. It's a term that you kind of not adapt or take over the trauma or their stories, but there's a little bit of it's something lingering in you. It stays with you. And so in your case, how do you protect yourself from don't feeling the whole pain? I mean, what do you do after today?
I do feel a bit like a sponge. I mean, I'm a highly sensitive person, which I now know is there's research around this, but I just feel like it's such a profound gift to have people feel safe and trusting to share their story. And I also think there's really something kind of powerful about creating a song from sometimes the sort of darker sides of human experience, because the song that comes out is so beautiful. And so to me, it's quite powerful. And I think that this is reflected in just, you know, kind of participants that have gone through this process. And what I'm hearing from you and from people today who we met with was, you know, just that surprise that, you know, just in a short period of time, this song has been created that didn't exist, and that has just beauty because it's from all of our experiences. And even if there's also pain and emotion that comes up, we have this like beautiful piece of art that comes from sometimes the harder elements of life.
So, you know, like, I feel that us in a society, we tend to live in a place where we have to put a mask on. We have to show a face and don't show the vulnerable side of us. And I mean, it's almost like you don't celebrate being vulnerable. You don't celebrate to cry. You don't celebrate expressing pain. You know, is this weird element of in many levels, you don't have permission to show the human side of it. You have to show that you're professional. When you hear that term, being
Yeah.
professional.
Right.
Why does that mean?
Yeah.
It means that
Yeah.
you are no longer a human. You have to show the best side of you. You have to show that you have everything together and that you can address the issues as needed and in a more mechanical way. It's like, okay, yes, I'm efficient. Yes, I can, I can be a bad, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I can be a person who can just go through the day and just, checking the boxes and yes, we're getting this, is this done. But why? Why? And the moment that we stop working and then go into the personal, why do we continue to do that? Even with our own, neighbors, friends, strangers, we hide our emotions. We hide. And maybe because no, everyone is in the same place. No, everyone understands that one person might be more sensitive than others. Maybe because we want to be polite. And I think it's also manners. I think manners has shown us that if you want to show your manners, don't be dramatic in front of people, basically.
Different cultures. And right. So, I mean, I lived in Europe for a while and a lot of Europeans would say, like, Americans are so, like they ask how you're doing, but do they really want to know? And right. I mean, but I think so what I have found and like in my background research and just into sustainability, is that the more that at least I find I can step into my own authentic self and try to show up as who I am, even though that's scary and, may not always make people comfortable. It's a kind of modeling. And when I was studying sustainability education, I was finding that, I was with this group of really brilliant people, professors, students, and many of us were living really out of balance lives while trying to make the world a more sustainable place. And I felt like maybe the best thing that I could do would be to look inside and try to figure out how to create self-sustainability and model that, like you said, to give permission to other people to step into that space.
Got a question for you, and
Sure.
I think this is a weird one.
I love questions.
Well, English is my second language. And it took me years to understand that term sustainability.
Yeah.
How would you describe that to a kid?
Yeah.
So if you describe it to a kid, that means it applies to everyone. Because when you already use that term like a few times already in this interview. And so I just want to make sure that people who speak English, like I said, it took me years. I will be hearing it from so many people. But then I will research it, but then that research did not match with the content that I was talking to, depending to the person I was meeting with or whatever. So how do you describe it to a kid?
Okay. Well, let me think about how I would describe it, and then you can tell me if you think this makes sense from a youthful perspective. So sustainability has been defined in a lot of different ways, and it really started, I think, with an environmental focus, looking at the natural world and how we as human beings can continue living on this planet by keeping it healthy. And sometimes things happen in the natural world, in our own individual lives that we don't have control over, right? For a child, for example, like you might be really happy where you're living and then your parent gets another job and you have to move somewhere, and that throws your whole system into turmoil. You have to start over in a place where you don't know people, and that can feel really out of balance. My idea of sustainability is to have really healthy ways to bring a system back into balance, to restore kind of equilibrium. And I think of creative expression as a way to do that, especially in sharing our stories. So you're sharing something vulnerable from a moment when your life was kind of out of balance. And then you're using melody and rhythm to create a piece of art. And through doing that, I mean, we had someone say today it felt therapeutic, it felt fun. It's like creating something beautiful that can then help restore a feeling of balance, of joy, of peace in your system. And so I think for me, it's really this idea of finding a way for each individual person, and that can be unique, to live a life that feels balanced and joyful, but also to figure out what it is that you can do in moments when things happen that are beyond your control. There's an accident, you lose your job, or someone's sick, or you're sick and you don't have complete control, but how do you find ways? For me, it's through music and through working with people like this, to create a feeling of centered and groundedness and well-being, in that moment. And it might not, and it's kind of like thinking about, the equation for nonviolent communication. I mean, you might not be able to fix that big thing in the moment. You've just lost your job. I mean, that may not be resolved in this moment, but what can you do in the moment? Maybe you can go for a walk. Maybe you can sing. Maybe you can feel your feet connect to the earth. Maybe if you're me, you can communicate a story to someone or have them share it with you and work together to create a piece of art.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. The reason, no, yeah. The reason why, another reason why I asked that question is that I guess I've been in settings that are way too technical. And so it's either sustainability in a infrastructure of an organization or sustainability in a housing sector, or sustainability in, like you say, environmental, or in the different areas that provides elements for sustain that healthy ecosystem. So to me, it's been a sustained system.
Right.
But I
How
don't
can it
think
continue on in perpetuity?
Yeah. And so that's how
in a healthy way.
Finally, after years, that's what I started to connect the dots. Oh, that's what it means. It's sustain something to be able to keep up the same thing system moving on forward.
Right.
How can we sustain the museum?
Right.
Or how can we survive? Basically, how do we survive?
Exactly. And then for me, it's what does that mean for an individual human system?
Yeah.
And how do we sustain it and stay healthy, knowing that there are things that are hard that happen in life that aren't always in our control and that can throw us off of this kind of sustained path and can sometimes make life a lot richer, but can be really difficult in the moment. Right. I mean,
and so this is the very first time in my life. So that's why I was asked this question. After all these years that I've been in the country in my weird English, this is the first time when I'm hearing that term in a personal perspective.
Wow.
I always hear it outside. I always hear it from, and that tells you I guess, what is my environment for me to be able to hear those terms. And so I don't have much time to take care of me internally to actually have this type of interactions and meet awesome. Everyone is awesome. I'm not saying that, no, everyone is awesome, but someone that actually taps into that deeper level of taking care of yourself, the inner care, is no outside, is no, sustaining the museum or taking care of my house, or being a mom and guiding her, making sure that all her needs are covered.
How do you bring that into the language and the culture and the way that we are in the world? And so this idea of self-sustainability was not part of my graduate program. I mean, there are elements that now are coming into it, like social justice, right? And the Universal Declaration of Human Rights includes well-being and health, but I was thinking, the self is really missing from this. Yeah. And I think, something that if you just boil it down to something that those of us who have been on an airplane will recognize is that you put your own oxygen mask on first before helping others.
Yeah.
And I think that the self, in times where there's just so much that you see that you have to do, right? Running a museum, raising a family, and seeing the needs of all these people and wanting to fill those needs and help people fulfill those needs. I think the self is often the first thing to go. The mask kind of falls off, and then suddenly you realize you can't breathe.
Well, and then also I think it's culturally, and in a gender too. Like I was raised that everything was more important to me first. Why? Because that's what it means to be a good girl, a good daughter. A good is like you had to, you got your priorities, and then if you take care of everything, then you can take care of yourself at the end. And so I grew up in that environment, and so that was not much of a. But on this new format, our time is getting closer. I don't want to spend too much time in that terminology. There's more amazing things to address than that term. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you for allowing us to do that presentation today at the museum with the group and create a new song and allow dialogue in ways that I don't think I have ever experienced. And so from a personal perspective, is the very first time that I'm exposed to something like this. Two, that I would like to let you choose. We got around 5 minutes, 5 to 8 minutes. So choose, is anything else that you would like to share about you that we have not tapped into? Something.
There's so much. Oh my gosh. I mean, each of us is made of thousands of stories. And I do think, I think part of what's important about this work is for each person to recognize that their stories have value and they have value. And I mean, I've heard from so many people, I don't have a beautiful voice. I don't have a story that's interesting enough to become a song. And I think we all do. And I think I guess this work is kind of that, like, it's a bottom-up approach to changing the way that we live individually and in community with one another. And, it may not save the world from this global sustainability perspective, but I think it is fundamental and just so important. So it's a rippling effect.
As now you see she's here. She's awesome. She's amazing. It's not just her talent. It's not just her technical knowledge, but it's the ability to have the empathy, the ability to, and it's dangerous too, to be really sensitive. Because then you struggle with your boundary lines and your filters, and how do you protect yourself? Talking about self-care. But I was sharing with her and Myrna earlier that only 7% of communication is through words. And so I think that music is another side of it, and an expression of your body, your singing, and just creating art out of it. I wish that we have a little bit more time to dive more into.
It's just the beginning.
Well, it's like what we missed real quickly is your history on many years on different parts on different part in many different areas that you've in different countries that you've been into trying to do the same work, and that we have the beautiful opportunity to do it here at the museum. And then this interview will not be available next week yet. When we have the other event, but you will be able to see the end result of today's workshop and the next week's workshop. And I do hope that we have more opportunities in the future to do this. But in the meantime, you got a few more minutes, couple more minutes.
Should we do a short song?
I would love to do that.
Let's see. We could just do the song we just wrote.
Do you remember?
I'm trying to remember it. Oh gosh. Maybe we should just record it and we'll have a sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to mess up anyone's voices. It's really important to me that each person's words are really honored. But I could share one of the songs that I brought that's really short and just powerful and comes from some like pretty traumatic stories from a young man. So a friend of mine in Seattle, she's a Jewish woman, and she has family friends in Gaza. And one of the members of the family, young man, he's been studying to become a doctor, and he asked if, in between semesters, he could come and stay with her. And his family's in Gaza, so he's trying to get his family out. And he came to stay with her, and I had the gift of spending just a few hours with them. And he shared, so we went through this process, just one-on-one, where he talked a lot about his childhood and some of the really just horrific things that he'd experienced, that he'd witnessed happening to other people, friends, family, and just people from his neighborhood. And then he shared these words from his mom and his dad. And he said, "My mom tells me call for peace, call for love. My father tells me be strong in love." And so we just had a few hours together, and what we ended up doing was bringing a melody to those words in English. And then I asked if he could translate it then to Arabic. And I would love to just sing that.
Absolutely. This is just
there's so much more that this song can become. But
I'm gonna take a video so you guys can see it too.
It stays with me, this song, and I know that he's been singing it as he's been working to get his family out of Gaza. My mom tells me call for peace, call for love. My father tells me be strong and love. My mom tells me call for peace, call for love. My father tells me be strong and love. Kellysa limohem, abuya Kellysa limohem, abuya Kellysa limohem, abuya Kellysa limohem, Kellysa limohem, abuya Kellysa limohem, abuya Kellysa limohem, abuya Kellysa limohem. My mom tells me, call for peace, call for love. My father tells me, be strong and love, 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 be strong and love. Yeah, Kelly Sally Mohan, Kelly Sally Mohan, Kelly Sally Mohan, Kelly Sally Mohan. Mom tells me, for peace, call for love. My father tells me, be strong and love.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
was beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh, I forgot we're still recording this. Recording my camera so I can share it to you later. But that was wonderful. Well, now you see why she's here and an idea of it takes a very special person to absorb pain and turn that into something beautiful, as you saw. So once again, thank you for the opportunity to interview you, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Okay.
Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LP FM.
We envision ourselves sitting at a round table where no one is the leader and stories are heard respectfully, regardless of gender, age, sexual orientation, disabilities, or ethnicity. We want to embrace our differences and similarities. We are creating a place where visitors can connect with the stories and each other. Our mission is we collect, preserve, and tell the stories of the Highline region and its people. We want to extend our mission outside the walls of the museum. Our Highline Voices represents us all, honoring our past, celebrating our present, and uniting to cultivate our future. This project allows us to reach out to demographics who might be unable to visit the museum. People with disabilities, low-income families, people who don't trust museums, and more. In partnership, we are launching a locally programmed new radio station at the museum, featuring recorded and live Highline's heritage, history, culture, arts, and more. Are you interested in sharing your story? Email director@highlinemuseum.org.